What if I told you that the most classified government secret in modern American history was discovered by a woman who couldn't even afford to pay her electric bill? Picture this: a 47-year-old widow standing in a field she never wanted to inherit, holding a rusty key she found in her deceased husband's belongings, about to unlock a door that would bring the FBI, the Department of Energy, and 3 alphabet agencies she'd never heard of to her doorstep within 72 hours. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming, including her, the man who would become her greatest ally in the chaos that followed, the one who would teach her that sometimes the most ordinary people are chosen for the most extraordinary purposes. Wasn't just some helpful neighbor. He was Director James Morrison, former head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the most decorated nuclear safety expert in the country, and he'd been watching her property for reasons that would soon become terrifyingly clear. You see, 3 months earlier, Elena Vasquez made a choice that seemed like the end of everything. She'd lost her house to foreclosure, her husband Miguel to cancer, and her hope to a mountain of medical bills that bankruptcy couldn't even begin to touch. When the lawyer called about inheriting her great-aunt's farm in rural Nevada, a place she'd visited exactly once as a child, Elena's first instinct was to sell it immediately. But what Elena didn't know, what nobody knew, was that buried beneath 847 acres of seemingly worthless desert land was a facility that had been abandoned so hastily in 1962 that classified documents were still sitting on desks, and enough weapons-grade uranium to level half of Nevada was still locked in underground storage chambers that time had forgotten. This is the story of how one woman's desperate search for a new beginning led to the discovery that would rewrite nuclear safety protocols for the next century. How a widow who felt like the world had forgotten her became the person who prevented what experts later called the most dangerous nuclear situation since Chernobyl. And how sometimes the person who sees your strength first is someone whose entire career has been spent preparing for the moment when an ordinary citizen might need to save everyone. Are you ready to discover what happens when the weight of national security falls on the shoulders of someone who just wanted to fix her broken life? Because Elena's story is about to prove that heroes aren't born in military academies or government agencies. Sometimes they're forged in the quiet moments, when someone chooses to keep going, even when everything seems lost. Let me take you back to where it all began, to a moment so ordinary, so quietly desperate, that it almost disappeared into the background noise of a life that seemed to be ending. Almost. It's 6:47 a.m. on what feels like the first day of Elena's new life, though she's not sure if that's a blessing or a curse. The Greyhound bus wheezes to a stop in Mineral Springs, Nevada, population 847, and Elena Vasquez steps onto cracked asphalt carrying everything she owns in 2 battered suitcases and a cardboard box held together with packing tape and stubborn hope. The town looks exactly like she remembered from that childhood visit 23 years ago, a collection of sun-bleached buildings clustered around Highway 6 like they're afraid to venture too far into the endless desert that stretches in every direction. The morning air is crisp in that high desert way that makes your lungs work a little harder, and the mountains in the distance rise like ancient guardians, keeping watch over secrets that time has buried and forgotten. Elena pulls out the crumpled paper with the address her great-aunt's lawyer had given her. 1247 Sage Creek Road. The taxi driver, a weathered man whose face looks like it's been carved from the same red rock that dominates the landscape, glances at the address and raises an eyebrow. Sage Creek, huh? He says, his voice carrying the weight of local knowledge. That's the old Ramirez place. Been empty for, must be 8 years now since your aunt passed. You sure that's where you want to go? Elena nods, though she's not sure of anything anymore. That's where I need to go. The drive takes 23 minutes along a road that starts as faded asphalt and gradually surrenders to gravel, then to dirt that kicks up clouds behind them like earthbound contrails. Elena watches the landscape roll past sagebrush and Joshua trees, the occasional hawk circling overhead, and not much else. It's the kind of emptiness that either terrifies you or sets you free, and Elena hasn't decided which it is yet. When they finally reach the property, Elena's first thought is that her great-aunt must have been either very poor or very eccentric. The farmhouse sits like a weathered monument to better times, its white paint peeling in long strips that flutter in the desert wind like surrender flags. The roof sags in places, and one of the front porch posts leans at an angle that suggests it's given up on the idea of being perfectly vertical. But there's something about the place that speaks to her. Maybe it's the way the morning light catches the mountains in the background, painting them purple and gold. Maybe it's the silence. That feels like a blanket after years of city noise and hospital beeping and bill collectors calling at all hours. Or maybe it's just that this broken-down place feels like a perfect match for her. Broken-down life. The taxi driver helps her unload her belongings, accepting her last $20 bill with the kind of gentle courtesy that small-town people show to obviously desperate city folks. As his car disappears in a cloud of dust, Elena stands alone in front of her inheritance, holding the key ring the lawyer had pressed into her hand with instructions that seemed important at the time, but now feel inadequate. 3 buildings on the property, the lawyer had said, his voice carrying the practiced efficiency of someone who deals with death and inheritance paperwork every day. The main house, a storage barn, and what your aunt's records list as a root cellar. The property's been vacant since she passed, but it's all paid for. No liens, no debts. Whatever you decide to do with it, it's yours free and clear. Free and clear. The words had sounded like salvation when Elena was sitting in his San Diego office, surrounded by bankruptcy papers and foreclosure notices. Now, standing in the desert wind with tumbleweeds rolling past like nature's commentary on her life choices, they sound more like a challenge. Elena walks up to the front door, her feet crunching on gravel that probably hasn't been disturbed in months. The key slides into the lock with surprising ease, and the door opens with a creak that sounds like the house itself is yawning awake after a long sleep. Inside, the house is a time capsule of her great-aunt Carmen's life. Furniture covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts, photographs in frames that have gathered dust, but still show glimpses of a life well lived. There's no electricity, the power was cut off years ago, but enough morning light streams through the windows to reveal a space that, despite its abandonment, feels like it could be home. Elena sets down her belongings and begins the process of uncovering her new life. Each sheet she pulls away reveals another piece of Aunt Carmen's world. A kitchen table scarred with decades of use, a bookshelf filled with volumes in Spanish and English, a rocking chair positioned by the front window as if its owner spent hours watching the desert and thinking thoughts that Elena will never know. Takes her most of the morning to explore the house, to mentally catalog what needs fixing and what might be salvageable. The plumbing works, though the water runs rusty. At first, the wood-burning stove in the kitchen looks functional, which is good since there's no gas line this far out. There are 3 bedrooms, each one sparse but clean, as if Aunt Carmen had prepared the house for visitors who never came. By afternoon, Elena has worked up enough courage to explore the outbuildings. The barn is exactly what she expected: tools hanging on walls, hay bales that have turned to dust, the accumulated debris of a working farm from decades past. But it's the 3rd building that gives her pause. The lawyer had called it a root cellar, but standing in front of it, Elena realizes that description doesn't quite fit. For one thing, it's much larger than any root cellar she's ever seen, easily the size of a small warehouse. For another, it's built into the side of a hill in a way that suggests the structure extends much deeper underground than would be necessary for storing vegetables. But the most unusual thing about it is the door. While everything else on the property shows the wear and weathering of decades in the desert, this door looks almost new. Heavy steel, painted a flat gray that seems designed to discourage attention, with a lock that's clearly more sophisticated than anything that belongs on a farm building. Elena walks around the structure, noting how it's positioned to be hidden from view unless you're specifically looking for it. From the house, it's invisible behind a rise in the ground. From the Yale road, it's blocked by a stand of Joshua trees that seem too conveniently placed to be accidental. She returns to the door and examines the key ring the lawyer had given her. Most of the keys are clearly for the house and barn old brass keys worn smooth by use. But there's one that's different, newer, made of a metal that doesn't show the patina of age. It's marked with numbers that don't mean anything to her. 1962, S7. Elena looks at the lock on the mysterious door, then at the key in her hand. The rational part of her mind says to leave it alone, to focus on making the house livable, and figuring out how to build a new life in this desert town. But curiosity has always been her weakness, and after losing everything that mattered to her, she's not sure she has much left to risk. She slides the key into the lock, and it turns with a click that sounds suspiciously like destiny. The door opens to reveal a staircase leading down into darkness. Not the musty darkness of a root cellar, but the clean, climate-controlled darkness of something much more sophisticated. Elena can feel air moving, which means there's ventilation. She can hear the distant hum of machinery, which means there's power. She pulls out her phone to use its flashlight, noting that she somehow still has signal bars even though she's underground. The stairs are concrete, professionally poured, with metal handrails that show no signs of rust or wear. This isn't some homemade storage space. This is something built by people who knew what they were doing. People with resources and purposes that extend far beyond storing root vegetables. 23. Steps down, the staircase ends at another door. This one is even more impressive than the first, thick steel with what looks like a combination lock and a card reader and warning signs in multiple languages that make Elena's blood run cold. Authorized personnel only, radiation hazard, security area, U.S. government property. Elena stands in the underground corridor, her phone's light casting dancing shadows on walls that shouldn't exist, reading signs that make no sense in the context of her great-aunt's humble farm. The silence down here is different from the desert silence above. It's the silence of secrets, of things hidden so well that even time seems to have forgotten them. She's about to turn around, to retreat to the safety of the ordinary world above, when she hears footsteps behind her. Slow, measured footsteps that belong to someone who's not surprised to find her here. Someone who's been waiting. Elena spins around, her heart hammering, and sees a figure silhouetted at the top of the stairs. A man, elderly but still strong, dressed in simple ranch clothes that somehow manage to look both casual and authoritative. "I was wondering when you'd find that door," he says, his voice carrying the kind of calm that comes from a lifetime of dealing with situations that would terrify most people. "Though I have to admit, I hoped it would take you a little longer." Elena's throat is so dry she can barely speak. "Who are you? What is this place?" The man begins walking down the stairs, his movements careful but confident. As he gets closer, Elena can see that he's probably in his 70s, with silver hair and eyes that seem to take in everything while revealing nothing. "My name is James Morrison," he says, stopping a few steps above her. "I live about 2 miles up the road. And as for what this place is..." He pauses, looking at the warning signs that surround them. "That's a conversation we need to have somewhere else. Somewhere safe." Elena's mind races. Safe? What do you mean safe? What's behind that door? James's expression grows grave. Nothing that belongs in the hands of ordinary citizens. Nothing. That should have been left unguarded for 8 years. And nothing that we can discuss standing in a tunnel that might not be as abandoned as it appears. He extends his hand to her, the gesture somehow both protective and urgent. "Elena, I need you to trust me. I need you to come with me right now. And I need you to not ask questions until we're somewhere that I can explain everything without worrying about who might be listening. Elena stares at this stranger who knows her name, standing in an underground facility that shouldn't exist, asking her to trust him with secrets that her great-aunt apparently carried to her grave. Every instinct tells her to run, to call the police, to get as far away from this place as possible. But there's something in James Morrison's eyes that stops her. Not just authority, but concern. Not just knowledge, but the weight of responsibility. He looks like a man who spent his life keeping dangerous things safe from dangerous people. And Elena Vasquez, who has lost everything and has nothing left to lose, finds herself taking his offered hand. James Morrison's truck is a 20-year-old Ford that's seen better decades, but it starts on the first try, and the heater works, which Elena appreciates more than she expected to. The desert gets cold fast once you're moving, and the adrenaline from her underground discovery is wearing off, leaving her shaky and disoriented. They drive in silence for the first few minutes, James keeping his eyes on the dirt road while Elena tries to process what just happened. The rational part of her mind insists that she's making a terrible mistake, getting into a vehicle with a stranger who just led her away from what might be the most significant discovery of her life. But the exhausted part of her mind, the part that's been making all the decisions since Miguel died, whispers that she's been making terrible mistakes for months now. So what's one more? Where are we going? She finally asks, surprised by how small her voice sounds in the cab of the truck. My place, James replies, his tone matter of fact. It's secure, and we can talk there without worrying about surveillance equipment. Elena turns to stare at him. Surveillance equipment on my property? James glances at her, and for the first time she sees something that might be sympathy in his expression. Elena, I know this is overwhelming. I know you came here expecting to inherit a simple farm and maybe start over. But that facility you just discovered? It's been on the government's radar for a very long time. And now that you've found it, you're on their radar too. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She spent the last 6 months learning how quickly life can spiral out of control, how a single phone call or medical diagnosis can destroy everything you thought was stable. But this feels different. This feels like she stumbled into someone else's nightmare. I don't understand, she says, though she's starting to suspect she understands more than she wants to. My great-aunt was just a farmer. She raised chickens and grew vegetables and never hurt anyone in her life. James's expression grows gentle. Your great-aunt Carmen was a remarkable woman, but she was also the widow of Dr. Eduardo Ramirez, one of the lead engineers on a classified nuclear research project that was shut down in 1962 when the government realized they'd built something too dangerous to continue operating. Elena feels the world tilt around her. Nuclear research? My great-uncle Eduardo was a farmer. He grew corn and raised cattle, and he was a nuclear physicist with a doctorate from MIT, James interrupts softly. The farm was his cover story, and apparently it was so convincing that even his own family believed it. But before he came to Nevada, he spent 5 years working on Project Prometheus at Los Alamos. When that project was relocated to a more remote location for safety reasons, he came here. Elena stares out the windshield at the desert landscape rolling past, trying to reconcile the images in her memory with what James is telling her. She remembers Uncle Eduardo as a quiet man with gentle hands who taught her to identify different types of birds during that childhood visit. She remembers Aunt Carmen as a woman who hummed while she cooked and kept a garden that seemed to thrive despite the harsh desert conditions. If that's true, Elena says slowly, then why didn't anyone come for the facility when they died? Why has it been sitting there for 8 years? James's jaw tightens. Because the project was classified at a level that meant very few people knew about its existence. When Dr. Ramirez died in 2004, There were maybe 6 people in the entire government who remembered that Prometheus had a Nevada site. When Carmen passed away 8 years ago, that number dropped to 3, and one of those 3 was me. They've reached James's property now, and Elena can see why he considers it secure. The house sits at the end of a long driveway that provides clear sight lines in all directions. There are no neighbors visible, no roads that offer concealment for surveillance. It's the kind of place someone chooses when they want to see trouble coming from a long way off. The house itself is modest but well maintained, with solar panels on the roof and what looks like a serious security system. James parks near the front door and sits for a moment, his hands still on the steering wheel. "Elena," he says, his voice careful, "before we go inside, I need to ask you something. When you were growing up, did you ever wonder why your family seemed to know things that other people didn't? About science, about the government, about situations that most civilians never encounter?" The question hits closer to home than Elena expects. She thinks about her father, who worked as a machinist but could discuss nuclear physics like he'd studied it in college. She thinks about her mother, who always seemed to know when bad news was coming, who could read people's intentions with an accuracy that was almost supernatural. She thinks about herself, walking through that underground facility with fear but not surprise, as if some part of her had always known that her family story was more complicated than anyone admitted. "My parents never talked about Uncle Eduardo's work," she says finally. "But there were always things that didn't quite add up. Books in our house that seemed too advanced for a machinist's family. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Questions I was told not to ask." James nods as if this confirmed something he suspected. The Ramirez family was recruited into the nuclear program because they had a rare combination of technical aptitude and absolute discretion. Your great-uncle Eduardo wasn't just a physicist, he was someone the government trusted with secrets that could reshape the world. That level of security clearance, that depth of classified knowledge, it tends to run in families. Elena feels a chill that has nothing to do with the desert air. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your presence here, your discovery of that facility, might not be as accidental as it seems. I'm saying that somewhere in Washington, there are people who've been waiting 8 years for someone with the right clearance level and the right family connections to show up and deal with what your great-uncle left behind." James gets out of the truck and Elena follows, her mind spinning with implications she doesn't want to consider. The idea that her inheritance might be something more than bad luck and desperate circumstances, that her entire life might have been shaped by government secrets and family obligations she never knew existed, is almost too much to process. Inside the house, James moves with the efficiency of someone who's done this before. He activates what appears to be a sophisticated security system, then leads Elena to a living room that looks normal except for the electronic equipment that probably costs more than most people's cars. "Swept for bugs this morning," he says, settling into a chair across from her. "We can talk freely here." Elena sits on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped in her lap to keep them from shaking. "You said you were one of 3 people who knew about the facility. Who are you exactly?" James reaches into a desk drawer and pulls out a leather wallet. Inside, Elena can see an identification card with an official seal and James's photograph. The text reads, "Director James Morrison, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Security Clearance Level Q." "I spent 32 years keeping nuclear secrets safe," James says, closing the wallet. "I retired 5 years ago, but some responsibilities don't end just because you turn in your badge. When Carmen Ramirez died, I made it my business to keep an eye on that property. I've been waiting for the right person to inherit it." Elena stares at him. The right person? Someone with the genetic clearance to access the facility safely. Someone with enough Ramirez family connection to override the security protocols. Someone desperate enough to actually use the key instead of just selling the property to developers who might stumble onto something they couldn't handle. The words hit Elena like a series of physical blows. Genetic clearance? What does that even mean? James leans forward, his expression serious. The Prometheus project used biometric security that was decades ahead of its time. Fingerprint scanners, retinal identification, and yes, genetic markers. Dr. Ramirez programmed the system to recognize his immediate family members as authorized personnel. That's why the key worked for you, Elena. That's why the doors opened. The facility has been waiting 8 years for someone with the right DNA to come home. Elena feels like the world is spinning around her. Everything she thought she knew about. Her life, her family, her inheritance is turning out to be a carefully constructed fiction. She's not just a bankrupt widow who got lucky with an inheritance. She's the genetic heir to a nuclear secret that the government has been trying to contain for over 60 years. What's in that facility? She asks, though she's not sure she wants to know the answer. James's expression grows grave. Weapons-grade uranium. Experimental reactor components. Research data that was classified. So far above top secret that most of the people who created it didn't have clearance to see the final results. And something your great-uncle was working on when the project was shut down. Something the government has been hoping was destroyed but has never been certain about. Elena closes her eyes, trying to process the magnitude of what she's inherited. Not just a farm, not just a new start, but a responsibility that could affect national security. A burden that her family has been carrying in secret for 3 generations. Why are you telling me this? She asks, why not just call the government and let them handle it? James is quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if he's trying to decide how much truth she can handle. Because, he says finally, the government's definition of handling it might involve making you disappear along with the evidence. Because there are people in Washington who would rather eliminate problems than solve them. And because your great-uncle Eduardo left specific instructions about what should happen if the facility was ever rediscovered. He reaches into another drawer and pulls out a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Elena's name is written on the front in careful handwriting that she recognizes from birthday cards and Christmas letters. He left this for you, James says, handing her the envelope, with instructions that it should only be opened if you proved capable of accessing the facility on your own. Elena's hands shake as she takes the envelope. The paper feels fragile, as if it might crumble at her touch. Inside, she can see the outline of what appears to be a letter and something else, something small and metallic. Elena, James says, his voice gentle but urgent, I need you to understand that once you open that envelope, there's no going back. Once you read what your great-uncle left for you, you'll be committed to seeing this through to the end. Ah, you ready for that? Elena thinks about her old life, the foreclosure notices, the medical bills, the loneliness of a future that stretched ahead of her like an empty highway. She thinks about Miguel, who always said that the most important moments in life are the ones where you choose to keep going, even when you don't know where the road leads. She thinks about the facility hidden beneath the desert floor, waiting for someone with the right combination of courage and heritage to decide its fate. She thinks about the weight of family secrets and government conspiracies, and the terrifying possibility that she might be the only person standing between a nuclear disaster and the people she's never met but is somehow responsible for protecting. Elena Vasquez, who has spent 6 months learning that life can destroy everything you think you know about yourself, looks at the envelope that contains the rest of her family's truth, and she tears it open. Elena's fingers tremble as she unfolds the letter, the paper crackling with age. Her great-uncle's handwriting is careful and precise, the same neat script she remembers from the postcards he used to send on her birthday. But the words themselves transform him from the gentle farmer of her memories into someone she never knew existed. My dear Elena, the letter begins, if you are reading this, then the worst has happened and the facility has been discovered. I pray that you are old enough and strong enough to handle what I am about to tell you. Because the burden I am placing on your shoulders is one that I have carried alone for 47 years. Elena looks up at James, who is watching her with the careful attention of someone who already knows what the letter contains. You've read this before? Your great-uncle showed it to me before he sealed it, James replies. He wanted someone outside the family to know what he was leaving behind in case the official channels failed. Elena returns to the letter, her heart pounding as she continues reading. The Prometheus project was not shut down in 1962 because it was too dangerous to continue. It was shut down because we succeeded beyond our wildest expectations, and what we created was too dangerous to let anyone know it existed. The official records state that our research into controlled fusion reactions was inconclusive and that all materials were safely disposed of. This is a lie designed to protect the world from the truth. The words swim before Elena's eyes as the magnitude of what she's inherited begins to sink in. This isn't just about weapons-grade uranium or classified research data. This is about something that was so revolutionary, so potentially catastrophic, that the government chose to bury it rather than risk its existence becoming known. We achieved stable fusion reaction at room temperature in March of 1962. The letter continues. Not the hot fusion that requires massive containment facilities and temperatures hotter than the sun, but cold fusion that could be maintained in a device no larger than a briefcase. The energy output was beyond anything we had imagined, clean, limitless, and capable of powering entire cities with fuel that could be extracted from ordinary seawater. Elena's breath catches. She may not be a physicist, but she understands enough about energy production to realize what her great-uncle is describing. Cold fusion has been the holy grail of nuclear research for decades, the theoretical solution to every energy crisis humanity has ever faced. If such technology actually existed, if it had been perfected over 60 years ago, it would revolutionize everything. But with that success came a terrible realization. The letter continues. The same process that could provide unlimited clean energy could also be weaponized in ways that made atomic bombs look like firecrackers. A single cold fusion device, properly configured, could level an entire state. In the wrong hands, our discovery could end human civilization. Elena sets the letter down, her hands shaking too badly to continue reading. The room feels like it's spinning around her, and she has to force herself to breathe slowly to avoid hyperventilating. This is why the facility was abandoned. This is why her great-uncle spent the rest of his life pretending to be a simple farmer. This is why the government has been hoping for 60 years that the secret died with the people who created it. There's more, James says gently, nodding toward the letter. Elena picks it up again, though every instinct tells her to stop reading, to pretend she never found the key, to run as far from this desert as her remaining money will take her. But Miguel's voice echoes in her memory, reminding her that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. The device itself is contained in Laboratory 7, behind a security door that will only open for my genetic descendants. The research data, the complete theoretical framework, and the step-by-step construction protocols are stored in the facility's central computer system. As of this writing, I am the only person alive who knows the full scope of what we achieved. And I am the only person with the authorization codes necessary to either secure the technology permanently or to transfer it to someone who can be trusted with its implications. Elena's mind races as she tries to process the weight of what she's reading. Not only has she inherited a nuclear facility, she's inherited the most dangerous scientific discovery in human history. And according to this letter, she's the only person alive who can access it. The choice, my dear niece, is now yours. The authorization codes are hidden in a place that only family members would know to look in the foundation stone of the old well behind the farmhouse, carved into the rock in a pattern that matches the one on your grandmother's wedding ring. You can use these codes to permanently lock down the facility, ensuring that the technology remains buried forever. Or you can use them to transfer the data to someone you trust to use it wisely. Elena reaches unconsciously for the chain around her neck, where her grandmother's wedding ring hangs as a pendant. She's worn it every day since her grandmother's death 15 years ago, never paying attention to the intricate pattern carved into the gold band. Now she realizes that what she'd always assumed was decorative filigree might actually be a map to the most dangerous secret on Earth. But know this, the letter continues, once you access Laboratory 7, once you see what we created, there will be no going back. The knowledge will change you, as it changed me. The responsibility will follow you for the rest of your life, as it has followed me. Choose carefully, Elena, because the future of human civilization may depend on the choice you make in the next few days. The letter is signed simply Eduardo, but there's a postscript in different ink, as if it was added years later. I have watched governments rise and fall, seen wars fought over resources that are insignificant compared to what lies beneath the Nevada desert. I have seen good men corrupted by power and honest scientists silenced by politics. Trust no one completely, but remember that sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary wisdom. The choice is yours, but you do not have to make it alone. Elena sets the letter aside and picks up the metallic object that was folded inside the envelope. It's a small key, different from the others, with symbols carved into its surface that match the pattern on her grandmother's ring. This, she realizes, is the key to Laboratory 7, the key to either securing the most dangerous technology in human history or unleashing it upon a world that may not be ready for its implications. How long have you known? She asks James, her voice barely above a whisper, about the cold fusion breakthrough? Since 1987, when your great-uncle finally trusted me enough to tell me the truth about the facility's current status. I've been monitoring it remotely for 8 years, making sure the containment systems remain stable and that no one else discovers its location. Elena stares at him, a new understanding dawning. You're not just keeping an eye on the property. You're standing guard over it, James nods gravely. Among other things, the official government position is that Project Prometheus never existed, which means there's no official oversight of what your great-uncle left behind. For the past 8 years, I've been the only thing standing between that facility and whoever might want to exploit what's inside it. The weight of this revelation settles over Elena like a lead blanket. Not only is she responsible for the most dangerous technology in human history, but she's also responsible for the man who has sacrificed his retirement to protect it. James Morrison isn't just a helpful neighbor or even a former government official doing his duty. He's a guardian who has been waiting 8 years for her to arrive and take over a burden that was never supposed to be hers. What happens if I choose to lock it down permanently? Elena asks. What happens to the technology? To the research, to everything my great-uncle spent his life protecting? It disappears forever, James replies simply. The self-destruct protocols your great-uncle installed will reduce everything to radioactive ash, and the world will never know what was lost. Humanity will continue to struggle with energy crises and environmental disasters while the solution to both problems becomes a pile of contaminated debris. And if I choose to transfer the technology, James's expression grows troubled. Then you have to decide who can be trusted with the power to either save the world or destroy it. And Elena, I need you to understand that there may not be anyone alive who can handle that level of responsibility wisely. Elena stands up and walks to the window, looking out at the desert landscape that has become the backdrop for the most important decision of her life. 6 months ago, she was a nurse's aide in San Diego, worried about mortgage payments and medical bills. Now she's standing in a stranger's living room, holding the key to technology that could reshape human civilization, trying to decide whether to save the world or protect it from salvation. "My great-uncle lived with this secret for 47 years, she says without turning around. How did he stand it? How did he get up every morning knowing what he was hiding? By focusing on the people he was protecting," James replies. "Your great-aunt Carmen never knew the full truth, but she knew enough to understand that their life in Nevada wasn't really about farming. She chose to trust Eduardo's judgment, to support his decision to keep the secret, even though it meant living a lie for the rest of their lives." Elena turns back to face him, and James can see the internal war being fought behind her eyes. She's a woman who has already lost everything once, who came to Nevada seeking nothing more than a chance to start over. Now she's being asked to shoulder a responsibility that governments and international agencies would struggle to handle. "There's something else you need to know," James says quietly. "Something I haven't told you yet." Elena's heart sinks. She's not sure she can handle any more revelations, any more weight added to the burden she's already carrying. "What?" 3 days ago, a satellite image of your property was requested by someone with high-level security clearance. Yesterday, a team of federal agents was dispatched to investigate what they're calling anomalous energy readings in the Nevada desert. They'll be here within 48 hours, and when they arrive, they're going to have questions that you're not prepared to answer. The news hits Elena like a physical blow. She's not just racing against her own indecision and moral uncertainty. She's racing against time, against government agents who may not have her best interests at heart, against forces that have been set in motion by her very presence at the facility. They know I'm here. They know someone with the right genetic markers accessed the facility. They know the containment systems have been activated for the first time in 8 years. And they know that whoever is responsible for these changes represents either the solution to a 60-year-old security problem or the biggest threat to national security since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Elena sinks back into the chair, overwhelmed by the cascade of implications. She came to Nevada hoping to escape the complications of her old life, only to stumble into complications that make her previous problems seem trivial by comparison. But as she sits there, surrounded by the weight of secrets and responsibilities she never asked for, she begins to understand something that her great-uncle had tried to tell her in his letter. Sometimes the most ordinary people are chosen for the most extraordinary purposes, not because they're specially qualified, but because they're the only ones available when history needs someone to step forward. And sometimes the biggest decisions aren't made by the people in power, but by the people who have nothing left to lose except their conscience. Elena Vasquez, bankrupt widow and reluctant heir to the most dangerous secret in human history, looks at the key in her hand and realizes that her great-uncle was right about one thing. There's no going back now. The only question is whether she have the courage to go forward. Elena stares at the key in her palm, its metal surface warm from her body heat, and for the first time since Miguel's diagnosis, she feels the familiar sensation of time accelerating beyond her control. But this time, instead of racing toward inevitable loss, she's racing toward a choice that will define not just her future, but potentially the future of everyone on the planet. 48 hours, she repeats, trying to make the timeline feel real. And then what? What happens when these federal agents arrive? James stands and moves to a cabinet that Elena now realizes contains far more sophisticated equipment than she initially noticed. He pulls out what appears to be a tablet computer. But the screen displays satellite imagery and data streams that look nothing like civilian technology. Depends on who sent them and what they've been told, he says, his fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Best case scenario, they're from the Department of Energy. They know the facility exists, and they're here to conduct a controlled assessment of the situation. They'll interview you, verify your genetic clearance, and establish protocols for either securing or transferring the technology. Elena watches as he manipulates the satellite images, zooming in on her property with a level of detail that reveals individual sage bushes. And worst case scenario, James's expression darkens. Worst case, they're from a Black Ops division that views the facility as a security breach that needs to be eliminated. They'll classify you as a potential threat to national security, and you'll disappear into a system that officially doesn't exist. The casual way he delivers this possibility makes Elena's blood run cold. She spent 6 months learning how quickly bureaucratic systems can destroy a person's life, but this is something entirely different. This is the kind of power that erases people not just financially or legally, but physically. How do we know which type of agents they are? We don't, James replies simply. That's why we need to make sure you're prepared for both possibilities. He sets the tablet aside and walks to another cabinet. This one secured with a lock that requires both a key and a fingerprint scanner. Inside, Elena can see equipment that looks like it belongs in a spy movie. Communication devices, what appear to be weapons, and stacks of documents with official seals. James, Elena says slowly, exactly what kind of nuclear regulatory commission director were you? For the first time since she met him, James Morrison allows himself a slight smile. The kind that handled situations too sensitive for normal regulatory oversight. The kind that was called in when nuclear facilities went dark and the official reports needed to say nothing unusual had happened. The kind that spent more time in unmarked vehicles than in government offices. He pulls out a thick folder and sets it on the coffee table between them. The cover is marked with classifications Elena has never seen before. Combinations of letters and numbers that suggest security levels beyond anything in civilian awareness. Your great-uncle Eduardo wasn't just a brilliant physicist. Elena, he was recruited into Prometheus because he had a rare combination of scientific genius and absolute moral integrity. The government needed someone who could create world-changing technology and be trusted never to reveal it, even under extreme pressure. Elena opens the folder, finding photographs that transform her understanding of her family history yet again. Here is Uncle Eduardo, not as the gentle farmer she remembers, but as a young scientist in a white lab coat, standing beside equipment she can't identify but which radiates importance even in black and white photographs. Here is Aunt Carmen, not as a simple farm wife, but as a woman with a security clearance of her own, working as a translator for classified communications. They knew, Elena whispers, studying a photograph of her grandparents at what appears to be a government function, dressed formally and standing with people whose faces have been deliberately obscured. My whole family knew they were part of something bigger. Your family was part of a network of people who were trusted with secrets that could reshape civilization, James confirms. Scientists, translators, security personnel, support staff, all bound together by clearances that went far beyond top secret and by a shared understanding that some knowledge is too dangerous to exist in the open. Elena finds a photograph that makes her heart stop. It's her father, impossibly young, standing in what she now recognizes as the main laboratory of the facility beneath her inherited farm. He's wearing a technician's uniform and holding what appears to be a component of some complex device. My father worked there too. Miguel Vasquez was one of the lead technicians on the cold fusion project, James says gently. He was there the day they achieved stable reaction. He was there when they realized what they had created was too dangerous to continue developing. And he was there when they made the decision to bury the technology rather than risk its misuse. The revelation hits Elena like a physical blow. Her father, who worked as a machinist for 40 years, who never spoke about science or government, who seemed to live the most ordinary life imaginable, had been present at one of the most significant scientific breakthroughs in human history. And he had never told her. Why didn't he ever say anything? Why did none of them ever tell their families the truth? James closes the folder and looks at Elena with the patience of someone who has spent decades explaining the unexplainable. Because the burden of that knowledge changes you. Because once you know that such technology exists, once you understand the implications of its use or misuse, you can never again live with the simple assumption that the world is a safe place. Your parents, your grandparents, your great-aunt, and uncle, they all chose to carry that burden so that you could grow up in ignorance, in safety, in the belief that humanity's greatest threats were the ones you could see coming. Elena thinks about her childhood, about the subtle ways her family had always seemed different from their neighbors. The books that were too advanced, the conversations that stopped when children entered the room, the way her parents always seemed to be listening for news that never came. She had attributed it to cultural differences, to the careful alertness that comes from being immigrants in a new country. Now she realizes it was something else entirely, the permanent vigilance of people who knew that civilization was more fragile than anyone imagined. But they're gone now, Elena says, the reality of her isolation settling over her like a weight. Everyone who knew the truth, everyone who understood the implications, they're all dead. It's just me, and me, James says quietly. Your great-uncle made sure of that. When he realized that the family line would end with him and Carmen, when he understood that the burden would eventually fall to someone without the full context, he arranged for someone outside the family to be brought into the circle of trust. Elena looks up at him, seeing him clearly for the first time since this conversation began. James Morrison isn't just a former government official who happened to live nearby. He's not even just a guardian who has been protecting the facility. He's the bridge between her family's legacy and her own future, the person chosen to help her navigate responsibilities she was never prepared to inherit. He chose you specifically? He recruited me in 1985, James replies. I was a mid-level NRC inspector then, good at my job but not particularly distinguished. Then I was assigned to investigate some anomalous readings from a decommissioned facility in Nevada. Readings that shouldn't have existed because officially, the facility had never existed either. James moves to the window, looking out at the desert landscape that has hidden so many secrets for so many years. I expected to find equipment malfunction, maybe some residual contamination from weapons testing. Instead, I found your great-uncle Eduardo, 73 years old and maintaining a nuclear facility single-handedly, keeping technology contained that could power the world or destroy it. What did you do? I tried to file a report through official channels. I was told that no such facility existed, that my readings were equipment malfunction, and that if I persisted in filing reports about imaginary installations, my security clearance would be revoked and my career would be over. James turns back to Elena, and she can see the weight of decades of secrecy in his expression. So I made a choice. I could let the bureaucracy bury the truth along with everything else, or I could help one old man carry a burden that was killing him slowly. You became part of the secret. I became part of the family, James corrects. Eduardo and Carmen never had children, but they adopted me in every way that mattered. They taught me about the technology, about the history, about the weight of keeping knowledge that could change everything locked away from a world that might not be ready for it. Elena tries to imagine the sacrifice this represents, a government career abandoned, a normal life surrendered, decades spent in isolation protecting something that officially doesn't exist. It's the kind of commitment that reshapes a person's entire identity. Why, she asks. Why would you give up everything for technology that you might never be allowed to use? James's smile is sad, but genuine. Because your great-uncle showed me what it could do. Not just the theoretical energy output or the potential applications, but what it actually accomplished in controlled tests. Elena, the cold fusion device in that facility, isn't just a prototype or a proof of concept. It's a fully functional system that can generate clean energy equivalent to a nuclear power plant while running on fuel that costs pennies and produces no radioactive waste. He pulls out another folder, this one containing technical specifications and test results that mean nothing to Elena, but which clearly represent years of Meticulous documentation. In 1987, Eduardo powered the entire facility for 6 months using a cold fusion cell no larger than a car battery. The energy was clean, stable, and completely safe. No meltdown risk, no containment failures, no long-term environmental impact. Elena stares at the documents, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what she's looking at. If this technology actually works, if it's as safe and efficient as James is describing, then her inheritance isn't just the most dangerous secret in human history. It's also potentially the most valuable gift humanity has ever been offered. If it's so perfect, why keep it hidden? Why not share it with the world? James's expression grows troubled. Because the same technology that can power cities can also level them. Because cold fusion doesn't just provide unlimited clean energy, it provides unlimited clean energy that can be weaponized by anyone with basic engineering knowledge. Because once this technology exists in the open, it becomes available to governments, corporations, and individuals who might not share your great-uncle's moral restraint. Elena begins to understand the impossible position her family has been in for 60 years. They possess the solution to humanity's energy problems, the technology that could end environmental disasters and resource wars. But they also possess the means to create weapons that make nuclear bombs look primitive. It's not just about keeping a secret. It's about protecting the world from a gift that could become a curse. The agents who are coming, Elena says, what do they want? What's their goal? That depends on what they know and who sent them, James replies. If they're from the legitimate oversight agencies, they want to assess the situation and determine whether the technology can be safely transferred to appropriate authorities. If they're from the Black Ops divisions, they want to eliminate any trace that the technology ever existed. And if they're from foreign governments or private interests, James's expression becomes deadly serious. Then they want to steal the most valuable technology in human history, and they're willing to kill anyone who stands in their way. The room falls silent as the full scope of Elena's situation becomes clear. She's not just inheriting a family secret or even a dangerous technology. She's inheriting a target that makes her simultaneously the most valuable and most endangered person on the continent. Every government, corporation, and criminal organization that learns of her existence will want either to use her or to eliminate her. James, Elena says quietly, I need to see it. I need to see the facility, the technology, everything my great-uncle left behind. I can't make this decision based on photographs and descriptions. I need to understand what I'm really choosing between. James nods as if he's been expecting this request. I was hoping you'd say that. Because there's one more thing your great-uncle's letter didn't tell you, something he wanted you to discover for yourself. What? The cold fusion device isn't the only thing in Laboratory 7. There's also a message, a video recording your great-uncle made specifically for whoever inherited the facility. A message that will help you understand not just what the technology can do, but what it's meant to do. Elena feels her heart rate accelerate as the implications sink in. Her great-uncle didn't just leave her a choice between locking down the technology or transferring it to others. He left her specific guidance, a final conversation across the decades with the person he knew would eventually inherit his life's work. When do we go? James checks his watch, his expression calculating. Now, before the federal agents arrive, before anyone else learns about your presence here, while we still have time to access the facility safely and privately. Elena stands, her mind made up. Whatever her great-uncle Eduardo has to tell her, whatever final wisdom he's left behind, she needs to hear it. Not just because the fate of revolutionary technology hangs in the balance, but because for the first time in months, she feels like she's about to have a conversation with family. Even if that family member has been dead for nearly 20 years. The drive back to Elena's property takes place in tense silence, both of them lost in thoughts too heavy for casual conversation. The afternoon sun casts long shadows across the desert, and Elena finds herself memorizing details of the landscape as if she might never see it again. The Joshua trees standing like ancient sentinels, the mountains purple with distance, the endless sky that makes everything human seem insignificant by comparison. James has equipped himself with what he calls basic safety gear, a radiation detector that clicks softly in the cab of the truck, a communication device that looks nothing like any phone Elena has ever seen, and a lockbox containing items he hasn't bothered to explain. The professional efficiency with which he's prepared for this mission reminds Elena that whatever else James Morrison might be, he's a man who has spent decades dealing with situations that could kill people if handled incorrectly. When they reach the farmhouse, Elena is struck by how different everything looks now that she understands what lies beneath it. The property that seemed like a humble inheritance this morning now feels like the surface layer of something vast and hidden. Even the placement of the buildings takes on new significance. The house positioned to provide clear sight lines, the barn located to block the view of the mysterious third structure from the main road, the whole layout designed by people who understood the importance of controlling access and visibility. "Before we go underground," James says, parking near the entrance to the facility, "I need you to understand something about what you're going to see. The technology your great-uncle created wasn't just advanced for 1962, it's still advanced. By today's standards, what you're about to witness is 40 years ahead of anything the public knows exists." Elena nods, though she's not sure she can truly comprehend what that means until she sees it for herself. She spent the last few hours trying to prepare mentally for revelations that seem to exist outside the realm of normal human experience, but she suspects that no amount of preparation will be adequate for what waits in Laboratory 7. They approach the steel door that Elena had discovered that morning, though it feels like a lifetime has passed since she first turned that key. James produces a device that resembles a high-tech stethoscope and presses it against the door, listening intently for several minutes before nodding with satisfaction. "No signs of unauthorized entry," he says. "The security systems are functioning normally, and there's no indication that anyone else has accessed the facility since you left." The stairs down to the underground complex seem longer this time, each step carrying Elena deeper into a world she never knew existed. The air is clean and temperature controlled, with the subtle hum of machinery that suggests systems far more sophisticated than anything that should exist beneath a Nevada farm. When they reach the second door, the one marked with radiation warnings and government property notices, James produces a key card from his wallet. "Eduardo gave this to me 20 years ago, he explains, sliding the card through a reader that responds with a soft electronic chirp. "Emergency access, in case something happened to the family line before the facility could be properly secured or transferred." The heavy door opens with the whisper of hydraulic systems, revealing a corridor that looks like it belongs in a high-tech research facility rather than a forgotten government installation. The walls are lined with monitoring equipment that displays readouts Elena doesn't understand, but which James scans with practiced efficiency. "Radiation levels normal," he murmurs, checking his handheld detector. "Atmospheric composition optimal. Containment systems functioning within normal parameters." He looks at Elena with an expression that mixes professional assessment with personal concern. "Are you ready for this?" Elena thinks about the question seriously. Is anyone ever ready to see technology that could reshape human civilization? Is it possible to prepare for the weight of knowledge that governments have killed to protect? But she thinks about her great-uncle Eduardo, carrying this burden alone for decades, and she realizes that readiness might not be the right concept. Sometimes you simply do what needs to be done, whether you feel prepared or not. "I'm ready," she says, though her voice sounds smaller than she intends in this sterile corridor. They walk deeper into the facility, passing laboratories filled with equipment that looks like it belongs in a science fiction movie. Elena sees devices she can't identify, computer systems that appeared decades ahead of anything she's familiar with, and monitoring stations that displayed data streams she couldn't interpret if her life depended on it. But it's not the technology that strikes her most forcefully, it's the sense of abandonment. The feeling that this place was left in the middle of important work that was never allowed to continue. Your great-uncle maintained all of this himself. For over 40 years, James explains as they walk. Every system, every safety protocol, every piece of equipment. He couldn't risk bringing in outside technicians, couldn't trust maintenance contracts to people without security clearance. It was a full-time job disguised as retirement. Elena tries to imagine the isolation this must have represented. Not just keeping a secret, but keeping an entire facility operational single-handedly, knowing that any failure in the containment systems could have catastrophic consequences. It's the kind of responsibility that would break most people, but her great-uncle had carried it with the same quiet dignity. She remembered from his visits to her family. They reach a final door, this one different from all the others. Instead of institutional steel and electronic locks, this door is made of what appears to be polished wood, with brass fixtures that look almost decorative. A small plaque beside the door reads, Laboratory 7, E. Ramirez, Principal Investigator. This was his private workspace, James explains. The place where he did his most sensitive research, where he kept the materials too dangerous to store. Anywhere else. The genetic lock that opens this door was calibrated specifically for family members. It won't respond to anyone else, no matter what their clearance level. Elena approaches the door and sees a small panel that looks like a sophisticated fingerprint scanner. But when she places her hand on it, she realizes it's reading more than just her fingerprints. There's a brief sensation of warmth, as if the device is analyzing her at a cellular level. And then the door opens with a soft click. Laboratory 7 is unlike anything Elena could have imagined. Instead of the sterile, institutional atmosphere of the rest of the facility, this room feels personal, almost intimate. The walls are lined with photographs, pictures of her family spanning decades, images of scientific achievements and historical moments that took place far from public view. There are personal items scattered around. A coffee mug that still bears Eduardo's initials, reading glasses folded neatly beside a notebook filled with calculations, a small radio that was probably his only companion during long hours of solitary work. But dominating the center of the room is a device that makes Elena's breath catch. It's smaller than she expected, roughly the size of a large desk, but it radiates an aura of controlled power that's almost palpable. The surface is smooth and featureless, except for a series of lights that pulse in a rhythm that reminds Elena of a heartbeat. This, she realizes, is the cold fusion reactor that her great-uncle spent his life protecting. It's beautiful, she whispers, surprised by her own reaction. Eduardo always said that the most dangerous technologies are often the most elegant, James replies. Simple on the surface, infinitely complex underneath, and capable of creation or destruction depending on how they're used. Elena moves closer to the device, feeling drawn to it in a way she doesn't fully understand. There's something almost hypnotic about the pulsing lights, something that suggests vast energies contained and controlled by human ingenuity. She can feel heat radiating from its surface, not the dangerous heat of uncontrolled reaction, but the gentle warmth of the system, operating exactly as designed. Is it active? It's been running continuously since 1962, James says, generating enough clean energy to power this entire facility, plus a significant surplus that your great-uncle fed back into the local power grid under false credentials. The electric company never questioned why their distribution losses in this area were lower than anywhere else in the state. Elena stares at the device, trying to comprehend the implications of what James is telling her. This machine has been solving the energy crisis for 60 years, producing clean power equivalent to a nuclear plant while consuming fuel that could be extracted from seawater, generating no waste, requiring minimal maintenance, and operating with complete safety. And the world has never known it existed. There's something else, James says, walking to a wall-mounted screen that Elena hadn't noticed before. The recording your great-uncle left for you. He presses a series of buttons, and the screen comes to life, displaying the image of Eduardo Ramirez as Elena had never seen him before. Not the elderly farmer of her memories, but a younger man, perhaps in his 70s, sitting in this very laboratory. The timestamp on the recording shows that it was made just 6 months before his death. "My dear Elena," Eduardo's recorded voice says, and Elena feels tears spring to her eyes at hearing him speak again after so many years. "If you are watching this, then you have found Laboratory 7 and you are facing the most important decision any member of our family has ever had to make." Elena sinks into a chair as her great-uncle's image continues speaking. Even through the recording, she can see the way he carried, the toll that decades of secrecy had taken on him. But she can also see something else, a deep, unshakable conviction that what he had done was right. "I want to tell you about the day we achieved stable cold fusion," Eduardo continues. "March 15, 1962. I was 34 years old, your father was 22, and we believed we were about to give humanity the greatest gift in its history. Clean energy, unlimited and safe, available to every person on Earth." The image of Eduardo pauses, looking directly into the camera with eyes that seem to see across the decades to where Elena sits now. "But within hours of our success, we realized that our gift could also become humanity's curse. The same process that generates clean energy can be modified to release that energy all at once, in an explosion that makes atomic weapons look like firecrackers. We had not just solved the energy crisis, we had created the potential for weapons that could end human civilization." Elena listens, transfixed, as her great-uncle explains the decision that shaped the rest of his life. The government officials who wanted to weaponize the technology immediately. The scientists who argued for open publication to prevent any one nation from controlling it. The military leaders who insisted it was too dangerous to exist at all. "In the end," Eduardo says, "we made a choice that satisfied no one and protected everyone. We buried the research, destroyed the official records, and sent our colleagues to other projects where they could continue their work without remembering what we had accomplished here. But we kept one working device, one proof of concept, one hope for the future." The recording shows Eduardo standing and walking to the cold fusion reactor, placing his hand on its surface with the gentle touch of someone saying goodbye to a beloved friend. "This machine has been my responsibility for 47 years. It has been my secret, my burden, and my hope. Now it becomes yours." Elena watches as her great-uncle returns to his chair, his expression serious but not despairing. "You have 3 choices, Elena. You can use the shutdown codes to deactivate the reactor permanently, destroying the technology but ensuring it can never be misused. You can transfer the data to government authorities and trust them to use it wisely. Or you can do what I have done, keep the secret, maintain the technology, and wait for humanity to prove it's ready for such power." The recording pauses, and Eduardo's eyes seem to focus on Elena with laser intensity. "But know this, the world is running out of time. Climate change, resource wars, energy poverty, these problems are accelerating beyond our ability to solve them with conventional technology. The solution exists in this room, but it requires someone with the courage to act and the wisdom to act correctly." Eduardo reaches off camera and produces a small device that Elena recognizes as identical to the cold fusion reactor, but smaller, no larger than a briefcase. "This is a portable version," he explains, "designed to demonstrate the technology safely, to prove to skeptics that cold fusion is not just possible but practical. If you choose to reveal our secret, this device will provide the evidence you need to convince the world that you're not speaking fantasy." The recorded Eduardo sets the portable device on the table beside him, and Elena can see lights pulsing along its surface in the same rhythm as the larger reactor. The choice is yours, my dear niece. But remember that some choices, once made, cannot be unmade. Some secrets, once revealed, cannot be contained. And some technologies, once released, reshape the world forever. The recording ends with Eduardo's final words. Trust your conscience. Elena, it has been shaped by generations of people who chose service over profit, protection over power, and humanity's future over personal comfort. Whatever you decide, know that you carry the love and faith of everyone who came before you. The screen goes dark, leaving Elena alone with James and the weight of her great-uncle's legacy. The laboratory is silent except for the soft hum of the reactor and the gentle whir of climate control systems. Elena stares at the portable cold fusion device, realizing that she's looking at proof that could change everything, evidence that clean, unlimited energy is not just theoretically possible, but practically achievable. The federal agents will be here tomorrow, James says quietly. Whatever you decide to do, we need to do it tonight. Elena stands and walks to the cold fusion reactor, placing her hand on its surface as her great-uncle had done in the recording. The metal is warm, alive with contained energy that could power cities or level them, depending on how it's used. She thinks about her great-uncle Eduardo, carrying this secret alone for 47 years. She thinks about her father, working in these laboratories and then returning to a life of deliberate ordinariness to protect what they had discovered. She thinks about all the family members who chose silence over recognition, safety over revelation, but most of all she thinks about Miguel and the conversations they used to have about climate change and energy poverty, and the seemingly insurmountable problems facing humanity. Miguel, who believed that solutions existed if people had the courage to implement them. Miguel, who always said that the most important decisions are the ones that affect people you'll never meet. Elena Vasquez, standing in a laboratory that officially doesn't exist, holding the key to technology that could save the world or destroy it, makes her choice. James, she says, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she's about to say. I need you to help me contact someone. Someone who can be trusted with this technology. Someone who has the resources and the integrity to use it correctly. James looks at her with something that might be pride. Who did you have in mind? Elena picks up the portable cold fusion device, feeling its weight both physical and metaphorical. I don't know yet, but I know we're going to find them. Because my great-uncle was right, the world is running out of time, and the solution is sitting right here in this room. Outside, the Nevada sun is setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. And deep underground, a technology that has waited 60 years for its moment is finally about to meet the world. Elena's moment of clarity lasts exactly 17 minutes. That's how long it takes for James's secure communication device to emit the sharp, urgent beeping that means their timeline has just collapsed from hours to minutes. James grabs the device, his face going pale as he reads the incoming message. They're here, he says, his voice tight with controlled urgency. 3 black SUVs, coming up the main road at high speed. Military plates, communications jammers active. These aren't the Department of Energy scientists I was hoping for. Elena feels her newfound resolve crumble like sand. What does that mean? It means someone in Washington decided this situation requires immediate containment rather than careful evaluation. James is already moving, pulling equipment from cabinets that Elena didn't know contained anything more dangerous than scientific instruments. Elena, I need you to listen carefully. These agents aren't here to assess the technology or evaluate your intentions. They're here to eliminate what they consider a security breach. The words hit Elena like ice water. She's been thinking in terms of making the right choice about revolutionary technology, But the people approaching her property are thinking in terms of eliminating threats to national security. And right now, she realizes with growing horror, she is the threat. What do we do? James hands her what appears to be a sophisticated radio, though it's unlike any communication device she's ever seen. This will keep us in contact if we get separated. The frequency is encrypted, and the signal is designed to penetrate most forms of electronic interference. He pauses, looking at her with an expression that mixes professional assessment with genuine concern. Elena, I need you to understand that once those agents arrive, everything changes. They have legal authority. That supersedes normal constitutional protections, and they have operational directives that prioritize containment over individual rights. Elena stares at the radio in her hands, trying to process the implications of what James is telling her. 6 hours ago, she was a bankrupt widow hoping to start over in an inherited farmhouse. Now she's holding military-grade communication equipment, while federal agents with elimination authority approach her property. The transformation feels surreal, like she stepped into someone else's life by accident. James, I can't do this. I'm not equipped for this kind of situation. I'm not a spy or a soldier or whatever kind of person handles government conspiracies. You're the person who inherited the most important technology in human history. James interrupts, his voice gentle but firm. You're the person your great-uncle trusted with a secret that could reshape civilization. And right now, you're the person standing between that technology and people who might not have humanity's best interests at heart. Through the laboratories, monitoring systems, Elena can hear the distant sound of vehicles approaching the property. Multiple engines moving fast with the coordinated precision that suggests military or paramilitary operation. Her heart pounds as she realizes that her quiet morning of discovery has become a high-stakes situation involving forces she doesn't understand and consequences she can't predict. What do they want? What's their objective? James checks his own equipment, weapons Elena now realizes he's been carrying all along. Best case scenario, they want to take you into protective custody while they secure the facility and transfer the technology to appropriate government oversight. You disappear into a comfortable but permanent detention facility, and the cold fusion research becomes classified above top secret. And worst case scenario, James's expression darkens. Worst case, they've decided that the security risk of the technology's existence outweighs its potential benefits. They eliminate all evidence that Project Prometheus ever existed, including anyone with knowledge of what was discovered here. The clinical way he describes this possibility makes Elena's stomach drop. She's not just facing arrest or detention, she's potentially facing execution by people who view her as collateral damage in a larger security operation. The weight of this realization settles over her like a suffocating blanket. How long do we have? James monitors the facility's external sensors, watching displays that show heat signatures and movement patterns around the property. They're taking positions around the perimeter. Professional deployment, coordinated timing. These aren't investigators, Elena. These are operators trained for high-value target elimination. Elena watches the displays with growing terror, seeing her property transformed into a tactical battlefield. Red dots representing human heat signatures are positioned with military precision, covering all potential escape routes and establishing overlapping fields of fire. Whatever these people have been told about her and the facility, they're treating it as a maximum security threat. Is there another way out of here? Emergency tunnel, built into the original facility design, James confirms, leading her to what appears to be a solid wall. He presses a sequence of hidden switches, and a section of the wall slides away, revealing a narrow passage that disappears into darkness. It comes out about half a mile away, in a maintenance shed that looks abandoned but contains emergency supplies and transportation. Elena stares into the tunnel, realizing that using it means abandoning the facility, the technology, everything her great-uncle spent his life protecting. But staying means facing agents who may have been ordered to eliminate anyone with knowledge of what lies beneath the Nevada desert. What about the reactor? What about the research data? James pulls out a device that looks like a sophisticated remote control. Emergency lockdown protocols. If I activate this, the entire facility goes into maximum security mode. All data is encrypted beyond current breaking capabilities. The reactor enters safe shutdown mode, and the access points seal themselves with locks that would take industrial equipment weeks to breach. And then what? The agents leave and pretend none of this happened. Then we buy time, James says, his voice grim. Time to contact people who can intervene at a level higher than whoever sent these operators. Time to find someone in the government who still believes in due process over expedient elimination. Time to figure out how to protect you and the technology from people who view both as threats to be neutralized. Elena looks at the portable cold fusion device she still carries, the proof of her great-uncle's achievement that could revolutionize human civilization or destroy it. The weight of the decision she made just minutes ago to find someone trustworthy to share the technology with now seems impossibly naive. She had been thinking about finding scientists and politicians who could handle the technology responsibly, not about evading elimination teams and protecting herself from her own government. "I've made a terrible mistake," she whispers, the full magnitude of her situation crashing over her. "I should have just activated the permanent shutdown codes. I should have destroyed everything and walked away." James stops his preparations and looks at her with sudden intensity. "Elena, listen to me. Your great-uncle Eduardo carried this burden for 47 years because he believed that someday the world would be ready for this technology. He trusted you with it because he believed you would have the courage to make the right choice, even when that choice became dangerous." The sound of vehicles getting closer penetrates even the underground laboratory, and Elena can hear the coordinated movement of people taking tactical positions. Whatever window for peaceful resolution might have existed is closing rapidly. But what if I'm not brave enough? What if I'm not strong enough to handle this kind of responsibility? "Then you learn to be," James says simply. "The same way your great-uncle learned, the same way your father learned, the same way every person who has ever faced impossible choices learns. You do what needs to be done because someone has to do it, and right now, that someone is you." James activates the emergency lockdown sequence, and Elena watches displays throughout the laboratory change from normal operational status to high-security containment mode. Blast shields slide into place over sensitive equipment, data encryption. Systems engage, and the main access points begin sealing themselves with locks that look like they belong on bank vaults. The facility will remain secure for approximately 72 hours, James explains as they prepare to enter the emergency tunnel. After that, the containment systems will begin permanent shutdown protocols unless someone with proper authorization. Codes intervenes. Elena realizes what he's telling her. They have 3 days to find help, to contact people who can intervene on their behalf, to locate someone in the vast machinery of government who can override the elimination order that has apparently been issued against them. 3 days to save not just their lives, but the technology that could reshape human civilization. "James, what if we can't find anyone? What if everyone we contact decides we're too dangerous to leave alive?" James looks at her with the steady calm of someone who has faced impossible odds before. "Then we make sure the technology survives even if we don't. The portable device you're carrying contains enough data to restart the cold fusion program from scratch. If we can get it to the right people, our deaths won't mean the end of your great-uncle's work." The casual way he discusses their potential deaths makes Elena's blood run cold, but it also crystallizes something important in her mind. This isn't just about her anymore, isn't just about the choice between personal safety and abstract responsibility. The agents approaching her property represent forces that would rather eliminate revolutionary technology than risk its misuse. And if they succeed, humanity loses the solution to its energy crisis forever. Elena looks around Laboratory 7 one final time, memorizing details of the place where her great-uncle spent decades perfecting technology that could save the world. The photographs on the walls, the personal items scattered around, the reactor humming softly with contained power, all of it might be lost forever if they can't find help in the next 72 hours. "I'm scared," she admits, though saying it out loud somehow makes her feel stronger rather than weaker. "Good," James replies, stepping into the emergency tunnel. "Fear keeps you alive in situations like this. But so does determination, and so does the knowledge that some things are worth the risk." Elena follows him into the darkness, carrying the portable fusion device and the weight of decisions that seemed clearer when she was making them in the safety of the laboratory. Behind them, the facility seals itself against intruders, protecting secrets that have waited 60 years for the right moment to change the world. Above ground, she can hear the coordinated movement of agents taking final positions around her property. Radio chatter and codes she doesn't understand, the sound of equipment being deployed, the mechanical precision of people trained to eliminate threats rather than evaluate them. Elena Vasquez, running through an underground tunnel with technology that could revolutionize human civilization clutched in her arms, realizes that her great-uncle's burden has become hers in the most literal sense possible. She's no longer just the keeper of a family secret. She's a fugitive carrying proof of the most important scientific discovery in human history, pursued by people who have been ordered to ensure that proof never sees the light of day. The tunnel stretches ahead into uncertain darkness, and Elena follows James toward whatever salvation they might find, knowing that behind them, the most dangerous technology on Earth waits in lockdown mode for someone to decide whether it will save humanity or be buried forever beneath the Nevada desert. The emergency tunnel stretches for what feels like miles, though Elena knows it's probably only half that distance. The walls are concrete, professionally poured and reinforced, with LED strips providing just enough light to navigate safely. The air is clean but carries the weight of decades, and Elena can hear the distant hum of ventilation systems that have been running automatically since 1962. James moves with the steady pace of someone who has traversed this route before, his breathing controlled despite his age. Elena follows, clutching the portable fusion device like a lifeline, trying not to think about the agents who are probably discovering the sealed laboratory doors right about now. "How often have you used this tunnel?" Elena asks, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. "Monthly maintenance checks for the past 8 years, James replies without breaking stride. "Your great-uncle insisted that all emergency protocols be tested regularly. He said that technology that sits unused becomes unreliable when you need it most." Elena finds herself smiling despite their circumstances. Even in exile, even living a lie for decades, Eduardo had maintained the disciplined habits of a scientist. Every contingency planned for, every system maintained, every possibility considered except the one they're living through now. They walk in silence for several more minutes before James raises his hand, signaling a stop. Ahead, Elena can see a ladder leading upward to what appears to be a maintenance hatch. James pulls out a device that looks like a sophisticated periscope and extends it through a small opening near the hatch. "Clear," he says after scanning the surface. "But we need to move fast. They'll have thermal imaging drones in the air within minutes, and this shelter won't hide our heat signatures for long." The hatch opens to reveal what looks like an abandoned utility shed, complete with rusted tools and cobwebs that seem deliberately placed. But Elena notices that the rust is superficial, and the cobwebs are synthetic camouflage designed to discourage investigation while concealing emergency supplies. James moves to what appears to be a broken workbench and presses a hidden switch. A section of the floor slides away, revealing a cache that contains everything they need for an extended evasion: food, water, medical supplies, cash, false identification documents, and communication equipment that looks more advanced than anything Elena has seen outside of spy movies. "How long has this been here?" Elena asks, examining identification documents that bear her photograph, but a name she's never used. "Your great-uncle started preparing contingency plans in 1987, James explains, pulling on a jacket that transforms his appearance from rural retiree to generic businessman. He realized that eventually, the secret would be discovered, and whoever inherited it would need resources to survive the aftermath. Elena studies the false ID with her picture and the name Sarah Mitchell. The quality is flawless, suggesting access to document production capabilities far beyond what any civilian should possess. She's beginning to understand that her great-uncle's network of protection extended far beyond a single retired NRC director. "James, exactly how many people were involved in protecting this secret?" James pauses in his preparations, considering how much truth Elena can handle while they're preparing to flee for their lives. "Your great-uncle didn't work alone, Elena. The decision to bury the cold fusion technology was made by a group of scientists and officials who understood that some discoveries are too dangerous for immediate release. Over the years, that group became a loose network of people committed to protecting the technology until humanity proves it's ready for it. A conspiracy. A protection protocol," James corrects gently. "People in key positions throughout the government and scientific community who share information and coordinate responses when the technology is threatened. Some of them don't even know the full scope of what they're protecting. They just know that certain research must be kept secure." Elena realizes that she's not just inheriting her great-uncle's scientific legacy, but his position in a shadow organization that has been operating for decades. The weight of this revelation is almost overwhelming, but it also offers a glimmer of hope. If such a network exists, maybe they have allies she doesn't know about. James hands her an earpiece that looks like a hearing aid, but clearly contains sophisticated electronics. "This will keep us in contact with the network. Once we're clear of the immediate area, we can start reaching out to people who might be able to help us." The sound of helicopters in the distance cuts through their preparations. Elena can hear multiple aircraft moving in coordinated search patterns that suggest military precision. The agents aren't just securing the facility, they're conducting a full-scale manhunt. "Time to go," James says, leading her to what appears to be another broken-down piece of equipment. But when he removes a camouflaged cover, Elena sees a motorcycle that looks like it was built for off-road racing, not agricultural work. "Your great-uncle thought of everything," James explains, starting the engine with surprising quietness. Electric motor, satellite navigation, and enough range to reach safe houses in 3 different states. Elena climbs onto the motorcycle, behind James, still clutching the portable fusion device. As they emerge from the shed, she can see searchlights sweeping the desert around her inherited property. The farmhouse is surrounded by vehicles, and she can make out figures in tactical gear, moving with military precision around the buildings. They ride in silence across the desert, following routes that James seems to know by memory. The motorcycle handles the rough terrain with ease, and Elena begins to understand that even this escape has been planned and rehearsed. Her great-uncle had prepared for this moment for decades, anticipating that eventually someone would try to seize the technology by force. After an hour of desert riding, James pulls up to what appears to be an abandoned gas station on a road. That doesn't appear on most maps, but Elena notices that the building's abandonment is as carefully crafted as everything else in her great-uncle's protection network. The gas pumps may be rusted, but the underground fuel tanks are clearly functional, and the building's windows are too clean for a truly abandoned structure. "Safe house?" Elena asks as James leads her inside. "Communication hub. James corrects, moving to what appears to be a broken vending machine. He enters a code on the machine's keypad, and the entire front panel swings away, revealing sophisticated radio and computer equipment. From here, we can contact the network and start figuring out who sent those agents and how to stop them. Elena watches as James activates communication systems that look like they belong in a military command center. Multiple screens come to life, displaying data streams, satellite imagery, and communication channels that span the globe. This isn't just a hiding place. It's a command post for the protection network her great-uncle built. "Elena," James says, his voice troubled as he monitors incoming reports. "We have a problem. The agents at your property aren't from any official government agency. The identification they're using is sophisticated, but it doesn't match any current DOE or NRC operations." Elena feels her blood run cold. If they're not government agents, who are they? James's expression darkens as he processes information streaming across his monitors. Corporate security, most likely. Industrial espionage specialists hired by someone who learned about the facility and wants the technology for private purposes. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. She had been afraid of government agents who might eliminate her to protect national security, but corporate operatives represent a different kind of threat entirely. They're not bound by constitutional protections or governmental oversight. They're accountable only to whoever is paying them, and their mission parameters could include anything from theft to kidnapping to assassination. How did they find out about the facility? James continues monitoring his communication channels, his expression growing more concerned by the minute. "I'm seeing increased satellite surveillance of your property dating back 3 weeks. Someone has been watching the site, waiting for the right moment to move." Elena thinks back to her arrival in Nevada, trying to remember if she noticed anything unusual. But she realizes that she was so focused on her personal crisis, so overwhelmed by grief and financial ruin, that she wouldn't have noticed surveillance unless it was completely obvious. "They were waiting for me," she says, the truth dawning on her. They knew someone would inherit the property eventually, someone with the genetic clearance to access the facility. "That's my assessment," James confirms grimly. "Which means they have inside information about the protection protocols, about the biometric security systems, about the family connections that were built into the facility's access controls." Elena stares at the portable fusion device in her hands, realizing that its value extends far beyond scientific curiosity or environmental benefits. In the wrong hands, this technology could be reverse engineered and weaponized, creating energy sources that could power cities or level them. A private corporation with access to unlimited clean energy could dominate global markets, manipulate governments, and reshape human civilization according to their own interests. "We have to contact someone," Elena says, her voice growing stronger. As the scope of the threat becomes clear, "We have to find people who can stop them." James nods, his fingers moving across multiple keyboards as he activates secure communication channels. "I'm reaching out to the network now. There are people in positions of authority who can intervene, but we need to be careful about who we trust. If corporate interests have infiltrated the government enough to learn about the facility, they might have people inside the agencies we would normally contact for help." Elena watches as James navigates through layers of encryption and security protocols that seem designed to confuse anyone without proper authorization. The protection network her great-uncle built operates like a shadow intelligence agency, with its own communication systems, its own verification procedures, and its own methods for distinguishing allies from threats. "Contact established," James announces after several tense minutes. Dr. Sarah Chun, Director of Advanced Energy Research at MIT. She's been part of the network for 15 years, and she has connections throughout the scientific and policy communities. Elena looks at the screen, seeing the face of a woman in her 50s who radiates the kind of controlled intelligence that comes from decades of dealing with complex problems. Dr. Chun appears to be in a secure office somewhere, and Elena can see that their communication is being encrypted at multiple levels. "James," Dr. Chun says, her voice coming through speakers with crystal clarity. "I've been monitoring the situation at the Nevada site. Are you and the Ramirez heir secure?" "For now," James replies, "but we need immediate intervention. The operatives at the facility aren't government agents. They appear to be corporate security working for unknown private interests." Dr. Chun's expression grows grave. "That's what we feared might happen eventually. How much does the heir know about the technology and the protection protocols?" Elena steps into view of the camera, drawing Dr. Chin's attention. "I know everything," Elena says, her voice steadier than she feels. "I've seen the laboratory, the reactor, the research data. And I'm carrying a portable demonstration device that proves the technology works." Double quotes. Dr. Chun's eyes widen slightly. "Eduardo actually completed the portable version. We theorized it was possible, but we never thought he had the resources to build it." Elena holds up the briefcase-sized device, its lights pulsing softly in the rhythm that has become oddly comforting. "It's been running continuously since I activated it. Clean energy, no waste, completely stable operation." "My God," Dr. Chun whispers, "do you understand what you're holding? That device could power a small city indefinitely. In the right hands, it could revolutionize energy production worldwide. In the wrong hands, it could be weaponized," Elena finishes. "I understand the implications, Dr. Chun. The question is, what do we do about it?" Dr. Chun is quiet for a moment, clearly weighing options that extend far beyond Elena's immediate safety. The protection network has been preparing for this possibility for decades. We have protocols for revealing the technology safely, procedures for transferring it to international oversight, and contingency plans for dealing with threats from both government and corporate sources. "What do you recommend?" "Immediate extraction," Dr. Chun says without hesitation. "We get you and the device to a secure location where you can't be reached by corporate security or compromised government agencies. Then we activate the revelation. Protocols-controlled disclosure to scientific and policy communities that can handle the technology responsibly." Elena feels a mixture of relief and apprehension. The protection network offers safety, but it also means committing fully to a path that will change her life irrevocably. Once the technology is revealed, once she becomes the face of humanity's greatest energy breakthrough, there will be no returning to the quiet life she had imagined for herself in Nevada. "How long would extraction take?" "Transportation is already en route," Dr. Chun replies. "The network maintains rapid response capabilities for exactly this kind of situation. You'll be at a secure facility within 6 hours. James monitors his surveillance systems, tracking the corporate operatives who are probably discovering the sealed laboratory doors right about now. Elena, you need to decide quickly. The longer we stay in one location, the more vulnerable we become." Elena looks around the communication hub, realizing that this moment represents the last decision point, where she might be able to choose a different path. She could still activate the permanent shutdown codes from here, could still destroy the technology and walk away from the responsibilities her great-uncle carried for 47 years. The easy choice would be to eliminate the burden entirely, to ensure that no one could ever misuse what her family had protected. But she thinks about the corporate operatives securing her property, people who view revolutionary technology as nothing more than profit potential. She thinks about the climate crisis accelerating beyond humanity's ability to solve it with conventional energy sources. She thinks about her great-uncle Eduardo, spending decades maintaining technology that could save the world, waiting for someone with the courage to share it responsibly. Most of all, she thinks about Miguel and the conversations they used to have about the problems facing humanity. Miguel, who believed that solutions existed if people had the courage to implement them. Miguel, who always said that the most important choices are the ones that help people you'll never meet. Dr. Chen, Elena says, her voice steady with newfound determination. I want to proceed with the revelation protocols. I want to share this technology with the world, but I want to do it right. I want to make sure it's used to help humanity, not to create new forms of exploitation or control. Dr. Chen nods approvingly. That's exactly what your great-uncle hoped you would say. The network has spent decades developing frameworks for responsible disclosure of revolutionary technology. We have international partnerships, scientific oversight committees, and policy structures designed to ensure that breakthroughs like this benefit everyone, not just the people wealthy enough to control them. The sound of aircraft approaching cuts through their conversation. James checks his monitoring systems and sees heat signatures indicating multiple helicopters converging on their location. They found us, James announces, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. Thermal imaging, probably supplemented by communication intercepts. We have maybe 10 minutes before they arrive. Dr. Chun's voice comes through the speakers with renewed urgency. Emergency extraction protocols are now active. There's a landing zone 2 miles north of your position. Can you reach it? Elena looks at James, seeing the weight of years of preparation settling over him like armor. This is the moment he has been training for since 1987, the crisis that justifies decades of vigilance and sacrifice. We can reach it, James confirms, already moving toward emergency supplies. Elena, we need to leave everything except the fusion device and basic survival gear. From this point forward, we're operating under combat conditions. Elena packs quickly, her mind racing with the implications of what they're about to do. She's not just fleeing from corporate operatives. Anymore, she's beginning a process that will reveal the most important scientific discovery in human history. Once she reaches the secure facility, once the revelation protocols begin, there will be no hiding, no anonymity, no return to the simple life she had imagined. But there will also be hope. Hope that clean energy can replace fossil fuels before climate change becomes irreversible. Hope that resource wars can end when energy becomes abundant and clean. Hope that her great-uncle's 47 years of sacrifice will finally result in the better world he had envisioned. They leave the communication hub through a concealed exit, emerging into the desert night where a different motorcycle waits, this one built for speed rather than stealth. In the distance, Elena can see searchlights sweeping the terrain, moving in patterns that suggest their pursuers are closing in. Elena, James says as they prepare to ride toward the extraction point, I need you to understand that once we reach the secure facility, everything changes. You'll become the most important person in the world, the keeper of technology that will reshape human civilization. Are you ready for that level of responsibility? Elena thinks about the question seriously. Is anyone ever ready to become the focal point of humanity's energy future? Is it possible to prepare for the weight of decisions that will affect every person on Earth? But she thinks about her great-uncle Eduardo carrying this burden alone for decades, and she realizes that readiness might not be the right concept. Sometimes you simply accept the responsibility that history places on your shoulders, whether you feel prepared or not. I'm ready, she says, climbing onto the motorcycle behind James. Let's go change the world. They race across the desert toward the extraction point, the portable fusion device secure in Elena's backpack. Its soft pulsing rhythm a reminder of the energy revolution they're carrying with them. Behind them, searchlights sweep empty buildings and abandoned communication equipment. Ahead of them, aircraft approach with the promise of safety and the certainty of transformation. Elena Vasquez, who came to Nevada seeking nothing more than a chance to start over, holds on to James Morrison as they ride toward a future where her name will be remembered alongside Einstein and Edison. where her choices will determine whether humanity enters an age of clean abundance or continues struggling with scarcity and environmental collapse. The extraction helicopter appears on the horizon, its lights cutting through the desert darkness like a beacon of hope. Elena feels the weight of the fusion device against her back, the weight of her family's legacy, and the weight of decisions that will ripple forward through generations. But for the first time since Miguel's death, she also feels something else. Purpose. As they race toward the helicopter, Elena realizes that her great-uncle Eduardo was right about one final thing. Sometimes the most ordinary people are chosen for the most extraordinary purposes. Not because they're specially qualified, but because they're the ones present when history needs someone to step forward. And sometimes, Elena thinks as the helicopter descends to meet them, the greatest gift you can give the world is the courage to accept a burden that was never supposed to be yours. The helicopter lifts off into the Nevada night, carrying Elena Vasquez and the most important technology in human history toward a future that will be shaped by her choices. Below them, the desert stretches endlessly, keeping its secrets beneath the stars, while above them, the sky opens toward possibilities that her great-uncle Eduardo could only dream of when he first achieved cold fusion in a laboratory that officially never existed. 6 months later, Elena stands before the United Nations General Assembly, looking out at representatives from every nation on Earth. The portable fusion device sits on the podium beside her, its lights pulsing steadily as it has for the past 6 months, generating clean energy that has already begun powering research facilities in 12 countries. The revelation protocols worked exactly as Dr. Chen had promised. The technology was disclosed simultaneously to scientific institutions worldwide, shared under international oversight that prevents any single nation or corporation from controlling it. The first commercial cold fusion power plants are already under construction, designed with safeguards that ensure the technology remains peaceful and accessible to all. 6 months ago, Elena tells the assembly, I inherited a farm in Nevada and discovered that my family had been protecting the solution to humanity's energy crisis for over 60 years. Today, I stand before you not as the owner of this technology, but as its steward, committed to ensuring that the gift my great-uncle Eduardo preserved reaches every person on Earth. The applause is thunderous, but Elena's thoughts drift to the Nevada desert, to the facility that now operates as an international research center, to the memory of a man who spent 47 years waiting for the world to prove it was ready for unlimited clean energy. Elena Vasquez, former bankruptcy victim turned guardian of humanity's energy future, smiles as she watches representatives from around the world commit to the peaceful development of technology that will reshape civilization. Her great-uncle Eduardo was right about one final thing. Sometimes the most important moments in history happen when ordinary people choose to keep going, even when they don't know where the road leads. If you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion to Elena's incredible journey from desperate widow to guardian of humanity's greatest scientific breakthrough, you won't want to miss our other amazing stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Subscribe to our channel for more edge-of-your-seat tales where science fiction meets human drama, where family secrets reshape the world, and where the fate of civilization rests in the hands of people who never asked to be heroes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode of stories that will keep you questioning what secrets might be hidden in your own family history. What would you do if you inherited technology that could save the world or destroy it? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video if Elena's courage inspired you to think differently about the power of ordinary people to change everything. Until next time, remember, the most important discoveries aren't always made in laboratories by famous scientists. Sometimes they're made by people like Elena Vasquez, who have the courage to open doors that have been locked for decades, carrying keys they never knew they possessed.